Kasparov solves this strategic challenge with a tactical maneuver. So and this is a very important transformation because he has definite control of the center and better development. Whereas Black has got better structure. So if the game is C3, and here I think is the most important part of the game. Hello and welcome. I've read an overall request of some of the games that we covered at the workshop, and I think there's only two main ones. So I thought, let me just make a quick video on them. We covered two games. One was Kasparov Karpov. This was their first game of the second match. Remember, the first match, they played 48 games and the match had to be cancelled because it was going on and on and on. Because the rules for that match was whoever reached a certain number of points first. And when you have good players, there can be so many draws that the match could go on forever. So they had to stop that match. And Karpov had started strong, but then energy had run out. He was the older player. And Kasparov was only 22 at the time. So a second match had to be organized where they had to play 24 games. And whoever got 12 and up, I think, would win the match, something like that. So the first game, Kasparov is white and opens with d4, and they play the Nimzo. Now, when you look at these classical games, you have to have a clear objective of what you are trying to learn from that. It's not just entertainment. Of course, you can look at games and go, okay, good, I want to learn something from these games. I want to have fun, obviously. But there must be something that you are consciously trying to say, okay, what am I learning from the way these guys are playing? So in this game, after c5, g3, knight a4, queen d3, queen a5, the concept we were covering in the workshop was transformation of advantages from one form to another, and how Kasparov does this precisely in this game. When you are also learning, your viewpoint should be like, okay, how am I going to apply this? And I think there's something quite beautiful and also very difficult to actually learn that you can benefit from this game. After it takes on e4, white takes on c3 with check, and Kasparov is left to play bishop d2. I know I kind of look at this as if it's not a big deal to discuss, but what's happening after queen e5 is that he is putting a lot of pressure on c3, knight can move its pinned. Yes, you can unpin, but then he gets a bishop pair and damages your structure on top of that. So Kasparov solves this strategic challenge with a tactical maneuver. So takes, allowing check, but then putting the bishop here, exchanging the bishops and ending up with this position. Now, the queen puts pressure on d4 and on b2. So you can't cover both in a way. And here it goes a little bit into a series of forced moves. So Kasparov takes on c5. And this is a very important transformation because he has definite control of the center and better development. Whereas Black has got better structure. So if the game goes long, it's going to be good for Black if he can manage to catch up on development. So c5 takes on b2, rook b1. Now, this position is a little bit tricky to take on a2 because then after, let's say, bishop g2 and preparing for castle, there will be quite a lot of pressure on the Black side. Another idea you cannot ignore in this position is the idea of sacrificing rook on b7, bishop b7, queen b7. But there's a lot of things to calculate. Let's just say taking on a2, it's a little bit risky. So Karpov plays queen c3, and here I think is the most important part of the game. If you are a serious player, maybe pause a little bit and try to figure out what you would play as white, because it's a very instructive move. If you have Kasparov plays queen d3, It's a very good move because if you think about it, the queen is moved to a5, one move, to b6, to b2, to c3. So if after queen d3 it goes to a5, it would have moved like 5 times. And that's a lot of tempo. And after bishop g2, whatever happens, you'll be far ahead in development. Let's say queen a5, queen d4, attacking g7, let's say castles, bishop d2. Okay, so to give you an idea, in a5, I'm thinking like a chess player. And let's say queen d4, castles, bishop g2. It's easy to see that this position is actually much better for white. And yes, you can develop and stuff like that, but still you'd be under pressure in this position. So Karpov takes, and it's amazing when you think of what you know of Kasparov and the fact that he goes into this strategic position. But there's a lot of things going for him. After knight a6, you have to think if you're black. If you develop centrally here, there's no way that you're going, let's say, after something like knight f3, your movements are pretty much limited. Another idea here is knight to e4, maybe even stronger, because here he's threatening check, but it's got just pretty much a grip on the black position. So Kasparov goes knight a6, d4, rook b8, bishop g2, and here he goes king d7. Again, you really don't want to play b6 because you're just going to end up with an isolated pawn. Either way you look at it, on b6. And after something like king e2, the rook is coming to b1. And this is going to be a problem to keep. So he first goes king e7, king e2, and after knight e4, jumping onto d6. Kasparov actually coined the phrase, like if you put a knight on d6, it's stronger than the rook. And he sort of proves it. e6, trying to create some counterplay, but you can't take on c5 because after take and take on c5, so I mean, you can't take here. Because after this, black still has a very strong grip on the square, on the queen side. And unfortunately, this doesn't work because of take. I think it's still a difficult ending, but definitely the only person who's got chances is white. So knight c7 was played. Kasparov now piles up on the pin, put pressure on a pin piece. And here, Karpov, the whole idea of the knight retreat is to try and remove this knight. Now, if you also practice ironing, take it seriously, pause here and see what you'll play after knight e8. I think it's very instructive also. I hope you did. And here the move knight e8. It's easy to want to take the bishop, but if you think of this position, the bishop is actually not that powerful. The weakness on b6 is very important. So take, and then pressure here. He goes bishop a6, and out of the way. If you try to take on b6, it's going to take on c4 with check. So you get out of the way, and he goes d5. Again, pause your video here if you want to try and learn something and see what you would do. I hope you did again. Pawn takes d6, very important, because now after, if you can take, because of course b6 is very strong and winning a pawn. So he goes rook here, king comes, rook takes, rook a6, a5, pawn takes, and here Kasparov just comes back, exchanges, and now he's got these connected pawns. The majority on the queen side, so you can create a passed pawn here. Now comes the next part of the game, which is more of technique, converting a position which is already advantageous. And after king e7, h4, he improves other things since black can't do anything. Just here, now takes control of the c file, and starts activating his passed pawn or potential passed pawn. And here it goes b6. Now you can't take on g4 because after b7, you have to give up a rook for the pawn. And here, again, rook c5. And just a favorable ending would arise if they exchange. Takes on c5, not allowing him to have a pass pawn. And now after king here, brings the king to help the pawn. It's important to know that the king is the best shepherd for passed pawns. And after rook c4, there's no stopping rook c7 check. And Kasparov wins a nicely played strategic game, which I think is very instructive. So that's what we covered on day one. I hope you can glean some stuff from it. And I'll share the game number 2, which we covered, which was between it was Botvinnik and Capablanca. Can you explain the significance of Kasparov's transformation of advantages in Kasparov's game and how it can be applied in other chess games? Absolutely. I think if you play a strong player, you're never just going to go in and do one thing and that's going to win you the game. If you play a strong player, is going to give you challenges. So you're going to have to be very smart to shift from one strategic advantage to another, or one form of advantage into another. In fact, the current former champion Magnus Carlsen was very good at this, and that's where he outplayed most players from shifting to one important concept to another. What specific lessons of strategies do you want the audience to take away from Kasparov's strategic position in the game? I think there's a psychology to the way he used Karpov's queen movement, especially after queen c3, where he offers him a queen exchange. A reasonable player who knows what they're doing would really hesitate to not take that exchange, even knowing that that position that they're heading into is not really comfortable. But having to be beaten because you moved your queen a couple of times, like a person who's learning the game, probably was quite tough for Karpov. So Kasparov, I think, he used that.